This is the Daily Items One-on-One. Our guest today is Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner Bruce Trego, interviewed by Justin Strawser.
Welcome to a special edition of One-on-One. I'm Justin Strawser, and today our guest is State Fire Commissioner Bruce Trego with the Office of the State Fire Commissioner. Thanks for joining us today, Bruce.
Welcome. Glad to join you. Thank you very much.
As the Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner, you are tasked with meeting the diverse training, operational, and informational needs of the Commonwealth's fire and emergency services community. Is there anything else on your plate that you do that you want to make sure we mention so people know?
It is a rather diverse position. We do grants and loans through our Harrisburg office and public fire education as well. In our Lewistown office is the State Fire Academy, where we do resident training, on-site training. We also do Academy on the Road training, which is a branch of our resident training done in the field by our adjunct instructors. We oversee local level training here, which is accredited by us. The curriculum is accredited by the State Fire Academy. The instructors are accredited by the State Fire Academy, and they teach out in the local level, trying to bring classes right to the fire stations rather than making them come to a county or even here to Lewistown for a long duration. There's about there's about 2,000 of those local level instructors that are accredited through us. The other things that we do here at the State Fire Academy include certification, which we offer third party, if you will, certification, national certification for about 40 levels according to NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association professional qualification standards. We also have what we call the Act 13, or the Alternative Energy Emergency Response Program area. And probably the biggest feature of that is we have an Act 13 grant, which is monies that go to counties that have wells, or the contiguous counties around that would respond into a well site emergency. And that keeps us busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So what we wanted to talk to you here today, since March 2020, every aspect of our life has been affected by COVID and the statewide shutdowns. On your end, what emerged as a trend across fire stations in the last 15 months?
I think one of the biggest was the ability to become innovative in the way we do things, in particular training. A lot of transformation of blended learning rather than face-to-face learning, so that the student could take as much online and not be exposed to other people at that time. And then when it was convenient and applicable, they could meet and do outside evolutions and still be protected and still meet the guidelines from CDC as well as Department of Health. I think that was one of the biggest things that we saw, was the innovative ways that people came up to be able to train both in the station. I had one chief call me and said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Are you okay with it?" Well, I don't have any regulatory authority, but he did look for some advice that would include what they did was break their training up. It took them a little longer, but they kept them in small groups and moved them into different areas of their station, so they weren't all exposed to each other at the same time. So again, there were more innovative ways that I think we saw, and as a positive, I think it helps us lead to the future of training in how we can better suit the needs of the fire service by providing that less time in the classroom with an instructor speaking, and getting that done online, and then they can spend more time with the hands-on portions, which are so critical. I mean, you can only learn so much in a face-to-face environment, or a lecture, if you will, as compared to going out and demonstrating that skill.
Yeah, that was going to be part of that question is, I imagine it's like you said, it only goes so far
Right.
online and digital, and nothing beats that in-person training, especially when fires are not going to be online or
Yeah,
across the computer screen. They're going to be in
absolutely.
person. Did you hear from some of the fire stations that they weren't sure how to go about doing that training, if they weren't allowed to be close in proximity to each other?
Yes, and that was very diversified across the Commonwealth because you had large companies, you had smaller companies, and they tried to do the best they could given the situation. Some did not train for a month or two until they could get everything set up the way they wanted to do it. And some of the what we did was uh, build our website up with more online training and refresher trainings that they could take at that time where they wouldn't have to be in a congregate meeting. And I think that really helped. And also in kind of in relation to what's going on this week, as far as the firefighter safety stand down, where it gave fire departments the opportunity to sit back a minute and take into, okay, let's plan this a little better and make sure things that are going uh, in preparation side. And we're all pretty good at response, but sometimes we're not as good at planning ahead of time. And we're reactive rather than proactive
Mhm.
for the most part. There's a problem, we go fix it. But there also comes that time of, okay, what kind of problems are going to face us?
What are you hearing from fire companies about their social clubs and their fundraising efforts and that aspect of firefighting?
Yeah, that definitely on the volunteer side took a terrific cut uh, in their budgets. Um, the General Assembly from Pennsylvania did uh, allot a $50 million grant that we did disperse, and out of it, we did get $48 million out to help the fire and EMS companies. Uh, and that was one step. The other thing, and I keep saying innovative, uh, but we did see innovation in the way people were raising money. Some of them still had their chicken barbecues, but it was a drive-through rather than have the people come in and sit down and eat. There were raffles and so on that they did online, and so long as they stayed within the parameters of what's legal with that, there were a lot of folks that are still doing it because it worked out so well for them, and that really limits the number of people that you have to have help in some cases if you're doing things online. And I know you run bingos and you do other fundraisers that really tie up the majority of your members, that they get, quite honestly, they get burnt out.
Mhm.
We joined to help people and fight fire or be on an ambulance to help people, not stand out in front of my house with a boot asking people for money.
Mm.
So, I think and we did see the reaction from the community to be very supportive, to help where they could. So again, I'll go back and at the risk of repeating myself, innovation was the best thing, and I think again as we move forward, that's a lesson learned that we can use in the future.
We'll be back after a short break with more from Bruce Trego.
And how about the idea of consolidation or merging? Um, have you heard from fire companies about doing that action, at all in your communities?
Yes, what we are seeing as a general statement, this is not specific to any one area, but
Right.
generally what we're seeing is more, not so much consolidations as what we're seeing combination departments
Mm.
where communities, municipalities are hiring people part-time for those hours or maybe full-time for those hours that they can't get the coverage for the volunteers because they're working. We're seeing an uptick in that. There are some consolidations and mergers going on. I would say we probably hear about, on the average, of at least one a month.
Hmm.
Uh, and that, again, if you look at the demographics of the Commonwealth and the way the population changes, in some areas we're building up in the townships and the rural areas around the community, and other places it's the opposite. People want to move into the to larger metropolitan areas. So uh, to be exact with my answer to you, it's difficult to determine whether a consolidation is necessary or a merger, uh, or would they be beneficial versus, hey, let's look at the community is growing, maybe we need more. And we don't always hear that side of the story.
We have here in Sunbury, there's a study they commissioned to look to see if they should combine, their forces here in Sunbury. Northumberland Borough, that the one that I live in, they're talking about making a formal agreement of working together, but keeping their social clubs separate. So that's sort of what prompted us to take a look at what's going on. Do you see a difference in urban versus rural firefighters or fire stations when it comes to some of the aspects that we've talked about, some of these topics?
Yes, and again, this is general. It is
Right.
not everywhere, but generally speaking, the 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 urban areas where they have a larger tax base are able to support the fire service with more resources than a rural community that does not have a large tax base.
That makes sense.
So in those cases, yes, it's a little easier for those folks.
Okay. Um, it's my understanding that volunteers have been needed for years and years. Um, has the pandemic amplified that need for volunteer firefighters?
Yes, I would say it has not changed dramatically. Um, and you're correct. The issue has been going on since the 70s. We've been declining in volunteerism since the 70s. And today's society, there are so many other things to do. And there are so many other commitments for us, uh, you know, uh, whether it's a family that needs to get their children to their activities after school or their other social activities, the time commitment for people to be a volunteer has decreased. I'm sorry, the commitment time has increased,
Hmm.
but the availability has decreased. And I think that's a sort of a social and a cultural thing that has been going on for years. And thus the folks that are able to have support enough that they don't need to spend all their time raising money, but they can spend their time training and responding. And I see that's where the difference is. And those folks, it's a little easier to get volunteers.
So there's different things fighting for people's attention more than there was 20,
Absolutely.
30, 40 years ago. That's interesting. Um, and so that when you ask that question, I think the pandemic took away a lot of that attention, the things fighting for our attention, but it still remained, that issue still remained of there's still a need for volunteers.
Yeah, and I think some of that could be related to the fact of, wait a minute, not only as a volunteer ambulance attendant, EMT, or as a firefighter, now I'm exposing myself to more issues rather than just the fire. And oh, by the way, I can bring that home. And I think that might have affected the ability for people to say, okay, I want to go do that.
Hmm. It makes
And
sense.
it,
I didn't think about it that way either. Um, are you I know you talked about, there's a $50 million grant, and some of the innovative ways that people were trying to solve those solutions. Are any other solutions that you maybe we forgot to mention? What can fire companies do to address some of these issues?
I think one of the biggest things we can do is be transparent
Okay.
and let the people know what it costs for a piece of fire apparatus now as compared to 50 years ago, and what we are trying to do to protect them. If you look at where can people help, we always look at firefighters or EMTs. And it's important to recognize that there are other skills that the community has that could assist these folks, especially when it comes to the administrative offices. Um, what we're seeing now is a lot of the firefighters and the officers are wearing 3 and 4 hats. Not only are they a fire department officer, such as a lieutenant, a captain, an assistant deputy, or a chief, but they also are holding offices such as vice president or president and financial secretary, because they don't have enough people in the company to do that. So I think it's important that we recognize that we can bring people into the volunteer business that don't have to fight fire and don't have to ride on an ambulance. They can be a benefit by helping with not only just the fundraisers, but the administrative positions.
Okay. Okay. Um, so Bruce, do you still go out on and fight fires?
At my age, no.
No.
To answer, my time commitment and just like everybody else with this position, I just have not had the time. I do try to support with training where I can. The other thing that I'm looking at is, as I retire, is to maybe bring some of my experience to help administratively.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I have not stepped foot on a piece of fire apparatus in response for over 4 years due to what I'm doing now.
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Lewistown. I was born and raised here in Lewistown. In 2001, I moved to Juniata County, where I've resided since.
That's where you were on the fire station team, or not on the team, on the firefighters.
Yeah, well, I try to help where I can down there. I'm a member of Mifflintown Hose Company.
Okay.
I would not say I'm an active member because of my inability to respond. Um, the like I said, I was born and raised in Lewistown. I started in the fire department up here in 1971, and as I ran through the ranks there, from firefighter, lieutenant, captain, and assistant chief, and now I'm happily retired from those positions.
Always good. Does your office keep like some statistical information about, how many volunteer firefighters there are in the Commonwealth or anything like that?
We cannot give you exact numbers
Okay.
because at the present time, we do not have the ability to maintain contact with every fire company because it's so diverse. All right, some of them join, we don't know about, or others may close and we don't know about it. But through our data with the grants, we can pretty much, get close to knowing the number of firefighters. The numbers get skewed because some firefighters and EMTs run at more than one station. So, you're not getting exact numbers that way. The other thing is that we are looking here in the Office of the State Fire Commissioner, in particular here at the State Fire Academy, is a new learning management system where we can capture that data so that one of the benefits would be to a firefighter if I lived in my example, if I lived in Lewistown for 20 years, all my training and all my records could be maintained. And if I move, I don't have to worry about, oh man, where's my certificates? How do I get all this stuff to my new company? So, to maintain the data of training here at the State Fire Academy, as well as we can give you numbers of people that come through here, but we can't give you the exact data as far as the number of firefighters that are in in the Commonwealth.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us today, Commissioner Trego.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing, Justin.
Thanks for watching One on One. Be sure to tune in again for another edition.